Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life.
Today, I am speaking about how to stop living on autopilot. Why do I talk about autopilot? And also, what impact does living on autopilot have on your life? Many of you will probably know my story of a nervous breakdown that literally forced me to stop. I wasn't capable of doing very much for 3 months. And then I gradually unpeeled my life as it had been by surrendering and allowing myself to question all my choices, all the way that I had abandoned myself, that I'd self-sabotaged, exactly what I help clients do. And in the unraveling of my life and also their lives, there is one thing that stood out more than anything else. And that was the importance of pausing. Had I not paused, I'd probably continue being this highly stressed person, repeating the same behaviours, the same responses, and the same choices of people pleasing, of giving my energy, my time, and also my life to my family. And truthfully, if that's what you're doing personally, this is for you. I am going to be speaking about pausing, reflecting, and choosing differently. So we rush through life. We very rarely give ourselves the time to stop. It's almost as if there is an element of ourselves that says, we can't, we're not allowed to. We have to keep going. If we stop, life will collapse around us. Well, that's what happened to me, but only because I didn't ever stop at all. I just kept giving and giving and giving. When you do that, what are you telling yourself? What are you telling everyone around you? And more importantly, how are you looking after yourself? I certainly didn't give myself time to relax, to go and enjoy the things I love doing, because I was always giving my energy to someone else. I was giving my time. If it wasn't to my family, it would have been to my clients. And yet, if you don't give time to yourself, how are you supposed to support your family? How are you supposed to support your clients, your customers, or your business, or even your career? So I want you to just take a moment and consider for yourself, what are you sacrificing in your life that if you reclaimed your time, you could take those sacrifices and change them into enjoyment, into pleasure, into doing the things that you love doing, or perhaps even need to do for your own mental health, your physical health, and your emotional health. Perhaps you could go on a retreat somewhere where you could have total peace. As you well know, many of you, Egypt is my place of peace. Where is your place of peace? Pausing is about giving yourself time to stop all the activity, all the noise, all the frantic having to do, being places, doing things, responding to emails, phone calls, your business requirements. Now, I'm not suggesting that you literally put everything on hold, although that's a good thing to do if you can. What I'm suggesting is you allocate time for you to quieten everything in your life and sit asking yourself questions. Questions to me was the one thing that got me through my breakdown. In enabling myself to ask why I did constantly get angry at my brother. Why did I constantly give my time to my mother? Why did I feel that I wasn't allowed to have time for myself? And when I work with clients, I have a 30-minute conversation with them before I agree to work with them or before they even agree to work with me. The reason for that is for them to understand how they're not allowing themselves to pause long enough to understand what's really going on in their life. But for me, it's about understanding why they're behaving in the way they are, why they're highly stressed, why life isn't as they want it. And what often comes out in those conversations are stories very similar to mine, of giving to family members, of supporting family members with time, with energy, financially even, listening to what they want rather than what my clients need for themselves. And even just taking those 30 minutes and understanding that actually they can take that time back if only they stopped listening to the expectations, the imposed ideas that as a child, you're supposed to give time to your family, or as an adult, you have to constantly give to your children in a way that drains you. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong not to give to your children. And obviously, when the children are young, yes, you have to. But autonomy for a child is a lesson they need to learn. You don't need to just chuck them in the deep end and say, get on with life. At the same time, you need to get them to respect that you are a person, that you are entitled to have peace at time, that you deserve to say to them, occupy yourself or help in the house. In doing so, you're actually teaching them to understand they can be responsible for their own choices. And that's what you need to do if you're a kind of person that keeps repeating the negative behaviours that drain you. So in pausing, you're giving yourself a chance to truly sit with how you're feeling and asking yourself questions about how you're feeling. Why are you feeling as you are? Why do you keep doing something? I kept going to see my mother every weekend, 140-mile round journey on one day. Why did I do that? There was an obligation because I felt guilty that she'd be on her own because my other family wasn't around to be able to support her. And that's what we do. We give ourselves responsibility of other people. And if you truly want to live your life as yourself, you need to stop feeling guilty. You need to stop beating yourself up. And you need to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, why am I going to see my mother every weekend? Why am I phoning my mother every day? Why am I giving all my time to my children when in fact there are things that they could do for themselves? Or why do I keep offering to do more than I need to at work? Or why do I keep boosting my husband up when actually it would be nice to receive some support back? Now, I must admit, potentially asking yourself those questions could cause problems in your relationship. When you start to be aware of what's really going on in your life and how much you are doing things automatically, you start to realize and question yourself, do I really want to do this anymore? What do I gain from doing this? Is there anything in this for me? Or am I just doing it because it's something I've already done? And I'm not putting value on a relationship in the sense of just because you do something, there is an automatic return. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying to you, you need to consider, by giving, what are you receiving? Not every time, but how much do you actually receive over a year, over 6 months, over a month, even a week? And there will be times when you give considerably more because that's how it works out. But at the same time, there will be times when you should receive back. And I use the word should because actually receiving a return when you've given so much is something that should be happening at some point. Not instantly, not perhaps that week, but when things have settled, you should be receiving some kind of return. And that is not being selfish, that's not expectation kicking in. It's the reality of a give and take relationship, any relationship. So having paused, I've obviously spoken about taking time to review things. And reviewing is part of the pausing. It enables you to explore what you need to explore. And in reviewing, you get a chance to reflect. For me, reflection was, what do I really want in my life? Why do I want that? Where do I want to be next week? In the next hour? And it's not physically necessarily where you want to be. It's where you want to be in your thinking process, in your emotional responses. Do you want to be calmer? Are you still feeling angry? Is that going to serve you being angry? Location-wise, is your environment serving you? And when I say environment, it could be your home, it could be your work, it could be simply where you're standing at that moment in time, what's going on around you that could be impacting how you're thinking and how you're feeling. Is it noisy? Is it irritating you? Is there somebody yelling at you or having a go at you and criticizing you? Or is there somebody playing loud music or just playing music even? I know sometimes I've walked into a hotel and they're playing music and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't want noise. I don't even want music. I just want quiet. So I've got up and walked out to go and sit in the garden or to find somewhere that was peaceful, that had no noise. Okay, there might have been background noise with cars in the distance, because obviously there's not many places you can go nowadays where you don't hear the sound of cars from the distance. Excuse me. But it is giving yourself a chance to reflect, to consider what's important to you, what isn't, what do you want, what do you don't want. And interestingly enough, I often hear from clients, I don't want that relationship. I don't want to hear the complaints all the time. I don't want to come home to a messy house. I don't want to constantly battle for clients, to actually, instead of searching them out continually, I want to know that there are going to be clients wanting to speak to me. But the thing about it is most of us focus on what we don't want rather than what we want. So in specifying you want clients to find you, rather than having to search them out, that's a change in energy instantly. And when you spent time reflecting, you can start to see how often you say, I don't want, rather than I want. There is a shift in how you feel in your body when you focus on the positives rather than the negatives. And I'm sure for yourself, there have been occasions when you thought, doesn't feel quite right. And then perhaps you've realized you've been focusing on not wanting to do something. And yet, if you consider when you want to do something, what's the difference in your energy? How do you feel within yourself? So reflection is part of the pause review, and then reflect. What are you seeking? What do you desire? How do you want to live? And I don't often use the word how, because that enables your subconscious mind to click in and go, oh, I know. But every now and then it's a good idea to ask, how do I want to live? How do I want to behave? Because there's clues in how you respond to how. Sometimes it's an obvious, well, I want to be living, say, in the middle of the countryside, or I want to be living by the coast. And then you can then start asking deeper questions. What is it about living by the coast that will make you feel happier, will make you feel more secure, will give you more pleasure? What about living in the countryside? Where in the countryside? Totally isolated, in a small village, on the edge of a small town? What? And when you ask the question how, because that does come from your logical mind, you can also see, when you consider how you've been reflecting, whether it's your ego that's kicking in and been saying to you, well, I don't like this, or I want this, or this is how things are going to be, when in fact, you know that doesn't feel right. So it's pulling what you think and what you feel together and reflecting on them. Once you've had a chance to pause, and you can pause for a few minutes at a time, you can even pause and just look out the window, or just watch a child playing or a dog wandering around, or just quieten your mind and just stare at something. Maybe you doodle. That's quietening your mind and pausing. Maybe you hum. Maybe you listen to songs or music, and that allows you to just quieten and just listen. Hopefully not beat music, rap music or something like that, because that's not going to allow you to quieten and calm yourself. You want to give yourself time to just relax a bit, to give your nervous system a chance to let go. And one thing I discovered on my healing journey, and this was prior to me actually going through my breakdown, was I used to find myself rubbing my shoulder above my breast. I would automatically rub there. Never knew why. Just every now and then I'd be sitting rubbing. Or I'd just rub my hands together. No reason, no logic behind it. I'd just sit and rub my hands together. Since I started understanding emotional freedom technique, I realized they're actually tapping points. The side of your hand is a tapping point. So by rubbing my hands together, I was actually unconsciously calming myself. The same when I was rubbing just above my breast or my shoulders. I was actually calming my nervous system. It's little things like that that are telling you you need to pause. Sometimes we get somebody saying something to us that stops us in our tracks. I can remember somebody saying to me, well, why do you go down to your mother's every weekend? It's obvious you don't always enjoy it. So why are you doing it? That had me stop and consider, why did I do it? And I knew I did it because I didn't want my mother being on her own 7 days a week. I did it because I felt obligated. I loved her, but to an extent, I also felt obligated. Being the middle child, being the one nearest, being the one with supposedly more time, less responsibility, I could do it. Also, there was a part of me that felt the need to understand my relationship with my mother more. Obviously, my father, when he was alive, I saw so much in the relationship between my parents and their own parents, that I filed away unconsciously. That when I sat with myself and asked myself those questions as I was coming out of my breakdown, it told me so much about my relationship with my family and how it was originally from what I'd seen from my own parents, what I'd witnessed, what I'd felt, what was communicated to me. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just seeing their relationship. And maybe somewhere within me was going, well, just go see her. You'll feel better for having seen her. You would have had a conversation with her that wasn't over the phone. You'd have gone out with her. And it was often on those quiet country walks where we wandered through woodland, because my mum adored woodland, or where we sat in the car over a headland and looked out at the sea. She loved the sea, just as I did and do. There's little clues in those moments. So it doesn't matter why you do something, it's looking at the clues within the relationship, within the things you do for somebody else, for yourself. When you pause, review, and reflect, you can pick those little things up. And they enable you to then choose yourself. In choosing yourself, you understand why you do things, why you think as you do, what you're doing automatically, why you're doing things automatically, what you want, what you don't want. And the don't want is just as important as the do, but once you decide what you don't want, you just let it go. You focus on the opposite, what you do want. I know that I don't want to continue living necessarily where I am. But I also know that at the moment, I've not made that decision as to where I truly want to be. It doesn't feel right now is a good time to make that decision. So I'm sitting with what can possibly be the location. I'm curious. I'm allowing things to unfold and trust the process that the right place will appear. And I do know that I shared that I would love to go and visit China. I've also said that I've been to Cyprus and we've wandered around Cyprus with the view of living there. And it was initially my choice to move there. But then I become involved in Sloth or Beaver and creating the cards. And it was like, now's not the right time. And the more I sat with Cyprus, the less I wanted to go. And I know there's a reason behind that. And I'm sitting with that knowledge, but remaining curious as to where I could go to live, where I truly want to live. I will not move until I know that for certain. There's too many things to be done in my life now, making up for the time that I lost because I kept giving to others. So if you want to find what you want to do, who you want to be, where you want to be, you have to explore what you already know, what you desire. And if you don't know what you desire yet, just be curious and allow the answers to flow. Even if you're just curious and allow thoughts to flow in and flow out again, to note what's going on, to be aware of perhaps something somebody says to you, or perhaps to be aware that something doesn't feel quite right. It's the feelings that we have that will be your guidance to what you really want, how you want to explore your world, the people in your world, who you want to connect with, how you want your business to be, what you're doing that's helping your business or actually hindering your business. My breakdown actually showed me just how much I hindered my business from expanding. And even in a conversation this week, I was given another insight into how I had stopped my business expanding, how I'd stopped myself from growing. And I'm still conscious of the fact I was using the term. And I'm not going to share the term because I don't want to give you ideas. I want you to spend your time looking at your life, reviewing what you're saying, what you're doing, how you're responding, how you're thinking, how you're feeling. There's so many things I could say to you, but I want you to think for yourself. And yes, I learned from hearing what the person said, and that person had actually said, I keep saying sorry before I share my prices. That's a big one. So where are you saying sorry in your life when you don't need to? I give a promise that I will change somebody's life in 90 minutes. I give that promise because I now know that I'm more than capable of changing somebody's life in 90 minutes when they work with me. I also am conscious of the fact that my fees reflect my experience. And for some people, that's not right for them. But that's right for me. And that's what matters. Not everyone is suitable to be my client or want to work with me in the way I work. But that's fine. I know that. I understand that of myself now. Before it was a case of, well, I can work with anyone. But I now recognize that in working with anyone, I'm not doing them a service. I could actually be creating a situation where I land up harming them rather than helping them. And I'm not prepared to do that. That is what pausing, reviewing, and reflecting enables you to get out of the time you do spend looking inwards, looking at your life. So I want you to consider 3 points. When do you ever pause? Do you pause at all? Are you so frantic at living life that you've forgotten that actually you do need to stop? And if you don't stop, your health suffers. You get highly stressed. You get colds, you get coughs. You even get things like hay fever. You can land up having an autoimmune disease. You could get cancer. Your body knows when it's time to pause. And illness is a sure sign that it's needing you to pause. So if you say to yourself, oh, I've got another cold, or this hay fever is driving me nutty, perhaps you need to take time out and question, what does this hay fever mean? What is it that's wrong within me that my immune system cannot cope with the environment I'm living in? Now, I'm not a health expert, so I'm only going by what I know, having worked with clients and my own history. So there's no reflection or judgment if you've got an illness or anything like that. I'm just observing and sharing with you that my own personal experience and my experience of working with clients tells me that our body creates an illness as a warning. And if we choose to ignore the initial warning, it just gets more and more inclined to create more serious illnesses. So just take that into account when you don't pause long enough to hear what's really going on in your life. Review. Review is literally just looking at your life. Where are you in your life? How happy are you even in your life, in your relationship, in your career, in your health? Happiness is something that we can choose. even in moments of massive sadness or huge upsets in our lives, we can choose to be happy. We can choose to have those moments when we laugh and not feel guilty for laughing. We can choose those moments when we have fun. Happiness is a choice. How happy are you in your life at the moment? So reviewing allows you to explore those elements of your life where you're unhappy, where you're uncertain, where you're thinking, this isn't quite right. What can I do about this? And it's then that you can start reflecting on what you've had, what you've got, and what you want. And that is something we need to do so much more of in our lives. It becomes a bit like the automatic habits you've already got. But it's not a habit. It's something you do because you're choosing to do so. Over time, you realize how much you gain from taking a step back and giving yourself the time to quieten the noise around you, to consider where you are in life, and then to reflect on where you want to be, what you want to bring with you and what you don't. So on that point, I am going to close.